So I am making these blue hats for Lion Brand's yarn. They're doing a campaign for blue hats to end bullying or anti-bullying. If you're interested in making blue hats also, you'll find the links in the video intro. And the deadline is August of 2020, the beginning of August 2020. So this is one of the blue hats that I made, and I have a separate video tutorial. This is a quick, easy, beginner beanie hat. So I have a link for that in the video intro. And I also have a separate video tutorial that shows you how to make this ribbed portion, so this style of rib for any of your hats. And I have a separate video tutorial that shows you how to make this adorable crochet bow, which will be cute for your hat or for amigurumi. So this is another crochet hat that I made, and you can see how I have that same style of ribbed portion for this hat. And I actually got this pattern out of a magazine, so you can see that a lot of different hats have this ribbed styled portion for it. And then I have attached, if you like this yarn, it's the Helenmay Crochet yarn. I left this on there for them so they could see the style of yarn. And here's another hat and that has the ribbed portion for this style of hat. And I also have a link for this pattern if you like this pattern, again in the video intros. So for this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you this style of brim. So if you like this style of brim, as well as how I made this pattern for the hat. So this is a really beautiful pattern that you can combine with this style of brim. And then if you like the pom-pom that I put on this hat, I used the 4-inch clover pom-pom maker for this one. If you need help sizing your hat, I'm going to show you how to size your hat with this video tutorial, so you can change the size if you want to. Now, this graph I have for free download on my blog, www.helenmaycrochet.com. Just go to the top of my homepage and you'll see a link for graphs, free graphs. I also have the link in the video intro for this video. So I'm just going to show you real quick. So for the head circumference, you just wrap the tape measure around your head to get the measurements. And if you have a hat, then what you can do, an easy way, like for this hat, I'm going to show you real quick. So at the bottom, the brim of the hat, this one measures about 10 inches. So double that, it's about 20 inches circumference on this hat. So it's a little bit, it's about 20-21 inches, so a small hat, small adult hat. And then you can also see the average length for a hat. So for this one, I made it about 8 inches. So if you want it longer, then you just increase the length for the size that you want. So for this video tutorial, I'm going to be using a 6mm crochet hook, as well as a tapestry needle or darning needle, and a pair of scissors. And I haven't decided yet, but I think I might add a pom-pom to the top of the hat. The yarn that I chose is this really pretty blue big twist yarn. So this is actually a big twist yarn that I'm going to be showing you on video tutorial. So I want to point out that the starting chain is actually the width of the brim of the hat. So the brim of this hat measures almost 2 inches. So your starting chain will determine the width. So however long that you want the brim of your hat will be the size of your starting chain. And then the amount of rows, or the length of the hat, will determine the circumference of your hat, or opening of the hat. So to make a starting chain, you just take the color of yarn that you're using, fold it over on itself to form a loop, take your crochet hook, go right through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and your thumb. Then you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, go through the loop for a slip knot. Go ahead and cinch that knot down and cinch the loop around your crochet hook. Now remember that hook size, if you use a different hook size or a different style of yarn, both of those can affect the size of your hat. So even though you're using a 6mm crochet hook, if you're using a different style of yarn, it will still affect the size of your hat. So now we're going to make a chain. So you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, go through the loop for one chain, 2, 3, 4. So for mine, I made a chain of 10, and you can see that my chain of 10 measures almost 3 inches in width. So again, this is going to be the size of the brim of the hat. So this portion right here. So your starting chain is the width of the brim of the hat. And then the amount of rows that you make will determine the length of the circumference or opening of the hat. So now I have the width that I want for the brim of the hat for mine. And now what you're going to do is you're going to go into the second chain from the hook. So you count back from the hook, 1, 2, and you're going to take your crochet hook, go into that second chain from the hook, and then you're going to bring up a loop. You're not going to bring up a loop, you're going to make a slip stitch. So you're going to yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and then bring the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch. And then you just kind of want to lift up just a little. You want to have a little bit of space between the hook and your work. So you can see I have a little space in there. And that's so your stitches won't be too tight, because we need to be able to get into the center and work into the back loop only. So you're going to make a slip stitch into every stitch back across. So you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch, and then just lift up slightly so you have a little bit of a space from the hook and your work. And then just work into every stitch. You're going to make one slip stitch in every stitch across. And then when you're finished with your first row, so this is your first row of slip stitches, you should have a stitch count 1 less than your starting chain. So my starting chain was a 10. So that means when I finish this row, I should have a stitch count of 9. So 9 slip stitches for the first row. And I recommend, especially for beginners, that you count your stitches. So I'm going to count them with you. I'm going to use my tapestry needle. So here you have 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have 9 total stitches, which is 1 less than my starting chain of 10. So now, after you finish your first row, we're going to go to the second row. So you're just going to turn your work. So this first stitch is a bit tricky. So your first stitch is sitting behind. So it's sitting behind your yarn. So you're holding your yarn, and it's sitting right in front of your first stitch. So I just wanted to show you, we're going to be working into the top stitch only. So here is your stitch, your first stitch. So you want to go right down the center and grab the top stitch or the back loop. So that's the back loop of the stitch. Here's the next stitch, back loop only. So you take your crochet hook, and you're going to go to the left of your yarn strand and grab that back loop only. So here's the yarn strand, you're going to the left of it, and then you're grabbing the back loop only of the stitch. So I just want to show you the stitch real quick. So here is the front loop of the next stitch. Here's the center of the stitch, and then the back loop. So there's the back loop of the stitch. And then here's the next stitch, back loop only. So we're going to be working into the back loops only and making a slip stitch. So you just yarn over and then pull the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch and lift up slightly. Give myself a little bit of room. Go into the next stitch. And you want to grab the back loop only and make your slip stitch. And remember, when you finish this second row of slip stitches, you should still have a stitch count of 9. So I'll count with you once we finish our stitches across. And we're working slip stitches into the back row only. So you can see how I'm working my second row. And you can see how easy it is for me to get into the stitch because I'm making sure that I'm not making my stitches too tight. But even if you do make the stitches too tight, you can use your tapestry needle to help lift up the stitch, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So now I just want to count, make sure that I have a stitch count of 9. So here's your first one. First stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 9 stitches. You can see how this stitch is a little small. So what I'm going to do is, throw my tapestry needle. I'm going to go ahead and lift up a little slightly on that stitch here, just to help me see it a little bit better. So now I know that I have 9 stitches. So I'm ready to turn my work, and now I'm working my third row. So you can see how the yarn will go in the way. So you can kind of go straight up and down if you want to. And I know I need to grab the back loop only. So there's the back loop only. I'm right in the center with my tapestry needle. Here's the front loop. So there's the front loop of the stitch, here's the center of the stitch, and then the back loop. So you take your crochet hook, go into the back loop only, and then make your slip stitch. So just the first stitch is a little tricky. And then make sure you lift up just a little so that you don't have too tight of a stitch. And then you just go right across into the back loops only and make your slip stitches. So it's really simple once you get the technique down and you're not making your stitches too tight and you know what you're looking at so that you're grabbing the back loop only of your stitch. And then you create a really neat design for the brim of your hat. Now this is tricky too. You don't want to miss the last stitch. So make sure that you get into, and sometimes it's a little tricky getting into the back loop of the last stitch. So that's where your tapestry needle can come in to help you. Make sure you grab the back loop of the stitch. You only want one loop of the stitch, that back loop. Then I'm just going to count. So again, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So again, make sure you count all your stitches and make sure you have 9 stitches. That way you'll have an even edge on both sides. And sometimes you can see that initial stitch where you turned can make a little small stitch there. So you kind of want to, you can lift it up with your tapestry needle to help see it. So I'm going to make another row with you. So now I'm going to turn my work. And again, that first stitch is right behind your yarn. So it's right behind the yarn. And I'm going to grab the stitch right on top. So here it is right here. You want the back loop only to the left of the yarn. So you go into the back loop only, and it's sitting right on top, so it makes it easy. So here you can see how all of your back loops are sitting right on top for you to go into. And there should be 9 of them, or one less than you're starting. So make a slip stitch. And then don't skip stitches. There's one right here too. There's my second. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. 7. 8. And 9. And you can see how you're creating a really pretty ribbed portion for the brim of the hat. And you just keep repeating this pattern until you have the length or the circumference of your hat that you're making. So now I'm going to turn my work and just show you that initial stitch again. So I'm going to the left of my yarn and then grabbing that top loop for my slip stitch. And then I just make slip stitches all the way across, making sure that I have 9 stitches when I'm finished, and that I'm grabbing only the back loop of the previous row's stitches. And here tapestry needles sometimes help you get into that last stitch, and you just keep repeating that until you have the length that you want for the brim of your hat, or the circumference of your hat. So now you can see how I have straight edges on both sides, and I made mine 20 inches. So it's 20 inches in length. And that's about the size that I want for my hat. So I'm making about a small adult size hat. So when you fold it, when you're finished with the size for the circumference of the hat, and when you fold it in half, you'll see that this will create the opening of the hat. And it creates a really nice brim for your hat. So then after you're finished, then we're going to fold it in half and slip stitch the opposite end. Make sure that you don't twist it. So the first thing you want to do is see which side you want to have as your right side. So you kind of flip it over and see which side you want showing. And I want this side showing. So you place the right side up and then fold it in half so that the wrong side is facing you. And then you're going to take your yarn. You have the wrong side facing you, and then you want to join the opposite side. Make sure it's not twisted, and then take and go into the top stitch of the opposite side, and then yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through both sides for a slip stitch. And then go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to sew the two ends together. So now I still have the wrong side facing me, and I'm going to take my tapestry needle and the long end that I left for sewing, and you're going to take and sew the two ends together. So you just grab the top stitch only on both ends so that you're sewing the ends together. And again, I have the wrong side facing me, so you don't want to sew so that the right side is facing you, because you're going to create a ridge on the wrong side. So make sure the wrong side is facing you as you sew, so that the ridge will be on the wrong side of the hat. And then when you're finished sewing, you can take and tie a knot with the loose yarn end. And then you can trim the yarn. Make sure that when you cut it, you leave enough of a loose yarn end for burying into your work. And then you can take and bury the loose yarn ends. So you take your tapestry needle, put the loose yarn end onto the tapestry needle, and just weave it into the wrong side. And I like to go back and then trim. So go ahead and bury your loose yarn ends. Then you can take and turn your work so that the right side is facing you. And then you can see how this creates a really pretty portion for the brim of the hat. Now make sure you keep the seam on the back of the hat, and that's where we're going to start our first round of the hat. So you take your crochet hook and you go into the first stitch, and then you're going to bring up a loop. So you bring your yarn and bring up a loop with the yarn, and then you're going to chain one and then tie a knot. So this first round is just going to be single crochet. And you're going to bury the loose yarn end as you crochet. So just kind of lay it across the top of the hat. And we're going to crochet around the loose yarn end. So now you're going to chain one again, and that counts as your first stitch. And you don't need a yarn marker because you're going to use the seam of the hat as the yarn, so you know when you get back to where you started. Then you're going to go in the next stitch over, and you're not going to be able to see the stitches, so you're just going to evenly space your single crochet stitches around for this first round. Go behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop, and then just make a single crochet. And then you're just going to evenly space one single crochet in every stitch around for one round. So go ahead and make one round of one single crochet in every stitch around. So you can see how I'm going into the next space, evenly spacing my single crochet. You have two loops on the hook, yarn over and go through both loops for a single crochet. So go ahead, finish making one single crochet, evenly spaced all the way around, back to where you started, and then come back. So this is how mine looks after I evenly spaced one single crochet in every stitch around. And for mine, I ended up with 59 stitches in the round. So you may have a different stitch count than me, and that's okay, as long as for all of the subsequent rows that we make, you maintain your stitch count. So for mine, I'm going to be maintaining a stitch count of 59. So after you finish making all of your stitches, your single crochet stitches on that round, then you're going to make a slip stitch into that first stitch that you made. So you take your crochet hook, go into both loops of that first stitch that you made, and then just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through both loops on the hook. Now we're ready for the next round. So for this next round is going to be our first round with half double crochet. So we're going to be making 1 half double crochet into every stitch around. So for our first stitch for this round, you're going to chain 2. 1, 2. And this counts as your first half double crochet for the round. Now when you're working with half double crochet, sometimes it's hard to find that first chain 2 that you made. So what I like to do is put a stitch marker into that second chain. So you can take your favorite stitch marker, and then you just take and place it onto the second chain that you made. And then that just helps you know which stitch it is that you need to slip stitch into to finish the round. And if you don't have a stitch marker, then you can take and place a yarn marker into that stitch. So you can just take a scrap of yarn and stick it in that stitch as well. Now the other thing that I found is sometimes hard to see the last stitch. So this stitch counts as 1 stitch for the round. So I'm going to go in the stitch before the chain 2 for this round, and I'm just going to stick a scrap piece of yarn into that stitch so I know that that's my last stitch for the round. And then that just helps me make sure that I know where my stitches are and where I need to slip stitch. And I mainly do that when I'm making hats with a half double crochet, because if you don't, then you'll see what I mean, how hard it is sometimes to see your half double crochet and where you finished your round. So now what you're going to do is you're going to yarn over, you're going to go into the next stitch, you're going to bring up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and go through all 3 loops for a half double crochet. And you're going to make 1 half double crochet in every stitch around for 1 round. So 1 half double crochet in every stitch around for 1 round, and then come back. Make 1 more with you. So yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops to complete a half double crochet. So I just finished my 59th stitch, so I know that I still have a stitch count of 59, and I know that with the stitch marker I can go right into the stitch with the stitch marker, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through both loops for a slip stitch. Then I'm ready to move up to the next row. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker, and then I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2. I'm going to go ahead and put my stitch marker back in, to that second chain, and then I'm going to go ahead and place my yarn marker into the stitch right before, so I know, and I'm going to keep track of my stitch count too, make sure that I have 59 when I end. And now we're going to start our design. So this is how my hat looks so far. Looks really pretty. I love how the brim of the hat looks, and the first round of half double crochet. So now I'm going to show you how to make the design portion of it. So now for the first stitch, you're just going to make, we have the first stitch is the chain 2 or half double crochet, and we're going to have 1 half double crochet in between each of the front post double crochet. So now, since this counts as my first chain 2 or first half double crochet, and it's directly over the previous row's half double crochet. The next post would be the post that you want to make your front post half double crochet stitch around. So you take your crochet hook, you yarn over, you go into the stitch or the space right before the post of the half double crochet that you want to work around. So you go right behind that post of that half double crochet, and then you see how the post of the previous round's half double crochet is in front of your crochet hook. And that's how it gets its name, front post half double crochet. So now you're going to yarn over, and you're going to turn the hook upside down and bring the yarn behind the post of the half double crochet from the previous round. Then you're going to yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through all 3 loops for a front post half double crochet stitch. So now you want to skip the stitch that's behind that post. So with a half double crochet, the stitch is actually a little off to the side. So here's the post of the previous round, and here is the stitch for that post. So you're going to make a half double crochet into that stitch. So you'll skip the stitch that you made the front post half double crochet around. So you don't want to make a half double crochet into that same stitch. You're going to go into the next stitch and make a half double crochet. So you yarn over, go into that next stitch, and make a half double crochet. So that's how you can kind of keep track of where you're working, because you look at the posts. So the half double crochet post. Let me just grab my tapestry needle. So here is the post for the stitch that we made the half double crochet into. So now here's the next post that we want to make a front post half double crochet stitch around. And you can see that the stitch kind of to the left, so it can be kind of confusing which stitch it is that you're skipping. So this is the stitch that you would skip because it belongs to this post. So you take your crochet hook, you yarn over, and you go into the stitch right before the post that you're going to make your front post half double crochet stitch around. And then you just yarn over and then bring the yarn behind the post and then make your half double crochet. And then you completed a front post half double crochet. And you can see this neat design that you're making. So now here is the next half double crochet post. So we want to make a half double crochet into that stitch. Then you know you skipped this post, so you're going to be making a half double crochet, front post half double crochet around the next post. So you yarn over, go around that post, and make your half double crochet. So you finished a front post half double crochet stitch around that post. And you keep repeating this pattern all the way around. So now here's the next post, and this is the stitch you want to make your half double crochet into. Then you know that you didn't make a front post half double crochet around this post, so you need to make one around that one. So it's that easy. And it makes a really gorgeous design. So now I look at the next post, and that's where you make your half double crochet stitch. You skipped this post, so you want to make your front post half double crochet around this post. And you just keep repeating this all the way around back to where you started, and then come back. So now I'm back to where I started, and I'm going to end with a front post half double crochet around that last stitch. And then I know I need a slip stitch into the stitch with my stitch marker. So I'm going to go into that stitch, yarn over, and then bring the yarn through both loops on the hook to end that round. And then I'm going to move up to the next round, so I chain 2. And then I'm going to remove my stitch marker and move it up. So I would recommend this with the stitch marker only because I found that it really helps, especially when working with half double crochet. I usually don't need it with double crochet. It's a lot easier, but with half double crochet it's hard to see that stitch so that you have a nicer join in the back of the hat. And then so far you can see the gorgeous stitch that you're creating with the front post half double crochet. So I have a separate video tutorial where I show you a similar method where you use front post double crochet for the hat. So for this hat I'm showing this fun new technique where you're using a front post half double crochet. So now you're ready to start the next round, and the next round is a little bit easier because you already finished all of your front post half double crochets, and those are what you're going to be working around for your front post half double crochet. So our next stitch, we know we start with a front post half double crochet around the previous, we're going to make a round of just 1 half double crochet in every stitch. So before we begin, I'm going to put my yarn marker right in the stitch so I know where I end the round. So we're ending the round with that front post half double crochet. So I mark that stitch so I know that. And we are going to make 1 half double crochet in every stitch for 1 round. So you're going to yarn over, go into that first stitch, which is that front post half double crochet stitch, and it's actually over to, that's the one thing about half double crochet, is the stitch is usually over to the side. So you find the right stitch, make your half double crochet into that stitch, and then you're just going to make 1 half double crochet in every stitch around. And then that should end back to your stitch marker with your original stitch count. So I should have 59 half double crochet still when I reach my yarn marker. So stitch count is very important when you're using half double crochet because it's very easy, like you see, to miss the stitch, because with half double crochet the stitch kind of goes at an angle a little bit. So go ahead, finish 1 round of 1 half double crochet in every stitch and then come back. So this is how my hat looks, and so far I'm really happy with how it's looking, and the design is turning out really well. So you can see how I have all of my stitches lining up how I want. So I have the front post half double crochet with 1 half double crochet in between. And so when I end it up, because of how I joined the back, which I still have the 1 half double crochet in between the front post half double crochet. And when I did that around this seam, I ended up with 2 less stitches. So now I have a total of 57. So that if that happens, that's fine, as long as you have the front post half double crochet and 1 half double crochet in between. And so now you just maintain that stitch count around. So now I have 57 stitches, but I know that everything looks okay as far as the design, especially on the back, because I have the front post half double crochet, 1 half double crochet, 1 front post half double crochet. So now I'm just going to maintain this pattern for the rest of the rounds for the length of the hat until I'm ready to close. So now I'm going to take and make a slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker. And if you use the stitch marker method, you'll find how easy it is to find that chain 2 on the back of the hat, and it makes a really nice seam for the back of the hat. And then this also helps me with the yarn marker. So then I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, to move up to the next round. And one of the things too is it's easy to forget to make the 1 round of half double crochet in between your front post half double crochet rounds. So try not to do that. These are the 2 rounds that you're going to be repeating. The front post half double crochet round, and then the 1 half double crochet stitch in every stitch around. So I'm going to move up my stitch marker so I know which stitch for slip stitching, and then I'm going to move up my yarn marker so I know where the front post half double crochet stitch or last stitch of the round is, right here. And you can see how it's right above the front post half double crochet. So now we're ready for our front post half double crochet design round. And it will be easy because you're going to use the front post half double crochet from 2 rounds down. So you yarn over and you go around the post of the front post half double crochet from down below, and then make your half double crochet or your front post half double crochet. Then you're going to, into the next stitch, you're going to make your 1 half double crochet. So there's 1 half double crochet in between each of the front post half double crochets. So there's my 1 half double crochet. Yarn over and go down to the front post half double crochet from 2 rounds down and make your front post half double crochet. And you're just going to repeat this all the way around. And you can see how that will help you maintain your stitch count, because you know that you have a half double crochet in between the front post half double crochet, and everything should line up from the previous rounds. And if it doesn't, then you know that you did something wrong and you need to find the error and then just correct it. So it's really easy. Just getting started is the hardest part, but once you get started, then you see that it's really easy and fun pattern. I really like this pattern. It creates a really beautiful design. So 1 half double crochet, and then a front post half double crochet around the previous, or 2 rounds down around the front post half double crochet from that first round. And then you just keep alternating the 1 round of 1 half double crochet in every stitch, and then the round where you make your front post half double crochet, and then 1 half double crochet into the next stitch. So go ahead, finish repeating this pattern all the way around, back to your stitch marker, and then come back. So now I'm back to where I started, and I know I need a half double crochet, and then I need a front post half double crochet around the last front post half double crochet from the previous round, first round of half double crochets, and then I can make a slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker, and then chain 2 to move up to the next round. And you can see how everything's lining up like it should. All of the front post half double crochets with only 1 half double crochet in between, and it just looks really gorgeous. So it's turning out really pretty. And you just keep repeating that pattern until you have the length that you want for your hat. So now don't forget to move your stitch marker up, because I find that the stitch mark is extremely helpful when you're working with half double crochet stitches. And then there's never any doubt which stitch you need to make your slip stitch into. Let's see. I'm in trouble with the stitch marker. Sometimes you can use safety pins too, if you need to. So I got it into the second stitch. Oh, now I can't move the... Fix that again. Okay, so now you're ready to make your 1/2 double crochet in every stitch. So now your stitch count should be the same. So now my stitch count is 57, so I should still have 57 half double crochet stitches when I finish this round. So this first chain 2 counts as 1, and then you make 1/2 double crochet in every stitch around back to where you first started. So now I'm back to where I started, and I have exactly 57 stitches. So I'm maintaining my stitch count, which makes me really happy. Then I'm going to make a slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this stitch marker. And then just make a slip stitch into that stitch. And then you just chain 2 to move up to the next row. And I'm going to go ahead and move my stitch marker and place it. So I saved you the torture of watching me get my stitch marker in. Even though it's easier, just on video it's hard for me to, but I love these stitch markers, they work great. So I got it into where I know I need to make my slip stitch, and then I have my yarn marker in place so I know where I end the last stitch. And so now I know it's really simple. I just work around the half double crochet, front post half double crochet from down below. So I just yarn over and then go around that front post half double crochet from 2 rounds down, and then just make my front post half double crochet stitch, and then I make a half double crochet into the next stitch, and then a front post half double crochet around 2 rounds down the front post half double crochet from the previous round. And it's that simple. You just keep repeating that pattern until you have the length that you want for your hat. When I come back, I'll show you what length I made for my hat. So this is a really fun stitch, and it turns out really gorgeous as a pattern, as you can see.